Hi, I'm Elon Musk. I'm the co-founder of Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal, and Zip2. I currently run Tesla and SpaceX, and I'm chairman of SolarCity, and I'm here to answer some reader questions. The first question is, how did I break into the business world? I started Zip2 instead of going to graduate school at Stanford. So I originally came out to California to do a PhD at Stanford in material science and applied physics, and basically working on advanced capacitors for use in electric vehicles. So I've had a long-standing interest in sustainable transport and sustainable energy in general. And I came out in '95, and then started working on some internet software in the summer of '95, and decided to defer grad studies at Stanford and try starting an internet company. It wasn't from the standpoint of actually sort of wanting to be an entrepreneur necessarily, but I actually applied to Netscape at the time, but they didn't respond to me. So that was the only internet company that I was aware of. So lacking any other internet company, I had to make my own. And that's what resulted in Zip2. And Zip2 built internet software for newspapers and other media companies. So it had New York Times, Knight Ridder, Hearst, and a bunch of others as investors and customers. So essentially, Zip2 helped bring the media companies online in the early days. So that was my start in business, I guess. But really, I think of myself as more kind of like an engineer who, in order to invent the things that I want to invent and create them, that I have to do the company as well. So I'm somewhat reluctantly the CEO. It's not my preference, actually. How was I involved in co-founding PayPal? So the PayPal story is quite complicated, even though it took place over a relatively short period of time. It was about roughly 3.5 years from the creation of the company to it being sold to eBay in mid-2002. And PayPal was created from the merger of two companies, X.com, which I founded, and Confinity, which was founded by Peter Thiel and Max Levchin. So we kind of combined our resources in early 2000, and both companies were only about a year old at the time. And then we were able to, by sort of pooling our resources, we're able to survive the dot-com implosion of late 2000, and then ultimately go public in early 2002, and then have a successful sale to eBay later that year. That's summarizing a crazy amount of stuff that happened over that period of time. What are your thoughts on PayPal being criticized for stealing account numbers, hidden fees, and not being a reliable money transfer system? Well, there's definitely lots of things that should be fixed about PayPal, but unfortunately, since I have not been part of the company since 2002, it's difficult for me to do things about PayPal. I think there's like a lot of functionality that should be added, and a lot of things corrected, and there's still errors in the PayPal system, like mistakes in structure that I put there, and I really, there's no actual good reason for them being there. We just didn't have enough time to kind of fix them, and I certainly think the fees are too high, and there should be much more functionality added to the system. And overall, PayPal has the opportunity to become the financial services company that addresses everything that a person needs. PayPal could really quite quickly become the largest consumer bank in the world, I think. You just need to take away the reasons that people remove money from the PayPal account. And then it's like, well, why don't you just use it for everything? So, it's somewhat counterintuitive, but I think if you reduce the fees in the PayPal system, then the revenue will be greater because more people will use it. Question 4 is, how did SpaceX come to be, and what are the long-term goals? Um, well, the reason for SpaceX, and the full company name is Space Exploration Technologies. The reason for SpaceX is the goal of SpaceX is to develop the technologies necessary to make life multiplanetary, or at least get us, make progress in that direction. I'm not saying that. I'm not asserting that we will develop all those technologies, but we're going to try and at least advance the cause of space exploration as much as possible. The key invention that someone needs to come up with, whether it's SpaceX or another company, is a fully and rapidly reusable orbit class rocket. This is an extremely difficult thing to invent because Earth's gravity is quite strong. Even for an expendable rocket, if you use the most advanced materials and advanced design techniques and get super efficient, you typically would get 2 to 3% of your liftoff weight to orbit. That's a pretty small number, and if you would just make a few mistakes in the design of the rocket, you will get nothing to orbit at all. And that's why only a few countries have reached orbit, just a handful. So then if you say, well, now let's make it a fully reusable system, then you have to take into account all of the increased weight to make the system more robust, to withstand the rigors of re-entry. You have to have heat shields. You have to have something that's going to bring the rocket back to the launch pad and then be able to land it, so whether it's parachutes or propulsive landing. All these things add a lot of weight. And in the past, when people have tried to make a fully reusable system, they've gotten sort of part way and then basically canceled the effort because they realized they would get negative payload to orbit. Anyway, that's what SpaceX is really trying to achieve long term, and I think we've got a good shot at achieving that. Some people might say, well, why care about reusability? Well, if you think of any mode of transport, consider whether it would get any use if it was not reusable, whether it's a horse, a bicycle, plane, car. If you look at the cost of a Falcon 9 rocket, to build the rocket is maybe about $50 million, but the cost of the propellant, of the fuel and oxygen and so forth, is only $200,000 per launch. So that's only about 0.3% of the cost of the vehicle. So just like a plane, how much does the plane cost, and how much does the fuel cost? Obviously, the fuel is quite small compared to the cost of the plane. It's the same with rockets. So if someone can invent a fully reusable rocket, and to be precise, it needs to be fully and rapidly reusable, like a plane, then the cost of launch would drop by about 100. That's pretty significant, maybe more than 100. So, and that's a critical factor if life is ever to expand beyond Earth and become multiplanetary, because you figure there's got to be, ultimately we'd have to transport millions of people and millions of tons of cargo. And if rockets were not reusable, well, you just simply wouldn't be able to make, I don't think you'd even make enough rockets. And where the discarded stages were being dropped, I mean, there'd be a small island of discarded stages, just in terms of the sheer number of expended rocket stages. So I think it's pretty intuitive that this is what has to happen, and someone, SpaceX or some other company, has to make this pivotal invention. And it really is, it's something that will shift the entire future of life as we know it, if that's invented. Because life has been confined to Earth for 4 billion years. That's a long time, and if there's no if life does not become multiplanetary, it will eventually go extinct on Earth. If for no other reason than gradual expansion of the sun. Yeah, that's sort of a lengthy answer there. How did Tesla come to fruition? All of these stories are quite long stories, so I'm trying to condense them to relatively short answers. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I've had a long-standing interest in electric cars because I think that's the way to achieve sustainable transport. That's the original reason I came out to California, was to try to develop energy storage mechanisms for electric vehicles. I guess it was in 2003, I got a call from J.B. Straubel and another guy who wanted to meet and talk about space stuff. And then during that conversation, they also happened to mention electric cars because they're pretty interested in electric vehicles. And they mentioned a company called AC Propulsion in Southern California that had developed a kind of a prototype electric sports car with really good statistics, like 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, 250-mile range. Now, it was just a primitive kit car, so basically taken a kit gasoline sports car, added lithium-ion batteries to it, and achieved that performance. So I got a demo in the car, and I was like, whoa, this is great. And so I tried to convince AC Propulsion to commercialize the sports car, but they were not interested in doing so. Eventually, after not being able to convince them for several months, I said, okay, look, if you guys don't do it, then I'm gonna, then I'd like to try to commercialize electric sports cars, because I think that we really need to show that you can make a compelling electric car. And then they said, well, if you're going to do that, then let's connect you up with a few other people. So I connected up with J.B. Straubel, and then a couple other guys, Martin Eberhard, Mark Toppening, and Ian Wright, and we created Tesla Motors to essentially commercialize the T0, which was the AC Propulsion car. And and obviously started that company with a lot of naivete about what it takes to create a car company. And pretty much everything went wrong. Ultimately, I think it took 5 times the amount of capital that we thought it would to bring the Tesla Roadster to market and get it up to, and iron out the issues. It's a pretty capital-intensive business, and I mean that's why if you look at the car companies that exist in the country today, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler all got started 100 years ago, roughly. So clearly, it is not an industry conducive to startups. But at this point, Tesla is actually doing pretty well. We've delivered a couple thousand Roadsters in over 30 countries. Customers seem pretty happy with that, and we're at a very advanced stage with the Model S sedan, which is due to come out around the middle of next year. So that's, I feel really good about the way things are with Tesla. Will Tesla cars ever become affordable to the middle class? Well, with the Model S sedan, we're aiming to significantly improve the affordability of the car, because we're going from the Roadster at about $100,000 to the Model S, which has a starting price of about $50,000. So it's a big step. Sort of, it's half the cost, and the functionality is much broader, because it's designed to carry up to 7 people, a tremendous amount of cargo space, 5-star crash rating, great ride and handling. It's really going to be a super great car. I mean, our goal with the Model S our aspiration with the Model S is to make the best car of any kind, and not just the best electric car. Then the third generation beyond the Model S, that's where we're aiming to get to about a $30,000 car, and that's hopefully in about 4 years or so, maybe 5 years. Depends on how well things go over the next few years. But certainly, the goal of Tesla from the beginning has been to make mass market cars. It's just that we didn't really have a big enough factory or enough money to do that. So we're kind of earning our way there in the shortest path possible, which is first generation being expensive, low volume, second generation with the Model S being mid-price, mid-volume, and then the third generation being low-price, high-volume. What's your role at SolarCity, and what are you working on there at present? So at SolarCity, I'm the chairman of the board and largest shareholder, but fortunately, I do not have to be there day to day. I just show up for the board meetings and hear the good news. That's basically what I do at SolarCity. The co-founders there, Lyndon and Peter Rive, really deserve the credit for making SolarCity what it is, and they've done an amazing job. SolarCity is now the largest provider of solar-powered systems in the country, and yeah, it's awesome. They're just growing like gangbusters, and very, very simple goal, which is to make solar power as affordable and widespread as possible. And they're growing the company about as fast as I think it's possible to grow a company. So that, yeah, it's going really, really well. If you could clone yourself and take on one or two more big issues aside from renewable energy, environmental cleanness, and space exploration, what would they be? Well, there's a couple of things that, well, there's maybe 3 ideas that I have that I'd like to execute on at some point, you know, but without affecting what I do at Tesla and SpaceX. I think it's possible to create a much better airplane. That I have a design in mind for a vertical takeoff and landing supersonic electric jet. That kind of combines what I've learned at SpaceX and Tesla, because sort of SpaceX has got the aerospace side of things, and Tesla's got the electric powertrain side. And I think that would be a really cool vehicle to have in the world, because you wouldn't need big runways, and you could get places fast and be relatively quiet, and of course it would be very low cost to operate, and good for the environment and all that. So that's one idea. And another is what sounds kind of mundane, but prefabricated metal sections for creating a double-decker highway. Living in LA, this is something that I've had a lot of opportunity to think about. It's a bit tricky to, you know, if you want to increase throughput on a highway, because you want to be able to do it ideally without affecting the existing traffic, as the current construction on the 405 can be very very annoying, and then when they're widening the 405 right now, and it'll be nice to have that extra lane, but in the meantime we often have like -1 lane. So I think if you could have, if you could really think of double-deckering a freeway. Double-decker is the wrong word, because I'm actually thinking of kind of like a box section down the center divider with a lane on the bottom, lane on the top, but then, you know, just create it as prefabricated sections so you could drop it in place like a Lego system. I think that would be really cool. Somebody should do that. And then the third thing is I think the fusion problem is probably easier than people think it is. And by this I'm talking about magnetically confined fusion. You know, that's a problem which gets easier as you scale it up, because you get like a surface to volume advantage. So like, it seems like a pretty obvious thing that you could, if you made it big enough, you could have a really effective magnetically confined fusion reactor. That's probably not the easiest problem to solve relative, or you could do like a thorium fission reactor or a better fission reactor. So maybe it's better to do better fission reactors, but I think fission does have a bit of a marketing problem. So and fusion is the energy forever solution. So those are the interesting things that I can think of. To what do I attribute my drive to take on such large issues? I want to be involved in issues that will have a significant effect on the future. And yeah, let's see. I guess I can probably trace that back to when I was a teenager, and I was trying to figure out what's the meaning of life, and there didn't seem to be any good answer. So it seemed like, well, then in the absence of having a good answer, then we should try to expand the scope and scale of human consciousness in order to better appreciate the nature of the problem that we're trying to solve and figure out what questions to ask. Just like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with Douglas Adams, I think he really hit the nail on the head that the really tough part is figuring out what questions to ask. Once you have a properly phrased question, the answer is comparatively easy. So if we're going to do that, then we obviously want to maximize the likely lifespan of humanity and expand beyond Earth, and just sort of get a better understanding of the universe. So I thought I would get involved in things that would do that. What future propulsion techniques will drive space exploration in the future? Well, so here's sort of an ironic thing, which is I think that essentially all modes of transport will go fully electric except for rockets. And the problem with getting out of Earth's gravity well is that it's very difficult to escape Newton's third law, which is that you kind of need to react against something, or you need to expel matter in order to have the opposite reaction, and have that momentum transfer such that you can move. I mean, there are sort of some ideas about having space elevators and that kind of thing, but I don't think those are likely to be successful. So you do need chemical propulsion, but I think that we can certainly improve on the chemical propulsion that's been done thus far. And I think probably a very high efficiency light hydrocarbon engine that uses sort of predominantly methane is probably a good way to go, and that's something SpaceX will end up working on. Once you get into space, or into orbit, I should say, then there are interesting potential. I mean, I think having high-powered ion drives are probably a good thing for interplanetary transport. And then there's some interesting ideas about having solar sails or sort of solar electromagnetic sails. Those could be interesting ways to go. But I think if we can establish a base on Mars, and that will then create a forcing function to improve space transportation technologies, and all sorts of things that we don't really know about today will get invented in the future. But you kind of need that forcing function, just like before there was a need to cross the Atlantic, there wasn't really a forcing function to improve ships. But once there was, the United States was there, then there was a big incentive to improve shipping technology across the Atlantic. Actually, that brings me back to the reusability thing. If ships had not been reusable in the days of American colonization, then the United States would not exist. All right, so the next question is, has your definition of a good idea for a startup or innovation changed in the past 5 to 7 years? Not really. I think it's pretty much the same idea. If you're going to create a company, you have to come up with a product or service that you think would be compelling, that would serve some need. And then really a great company is just built around a great product or service. That's the whole purpose of a company, is to propagate that product or service and put it in the hands of people who would find it useful. Yeah, so I think that's the main thing, is try to think of the most useful thing you could do for your fellow human beings, and then a company is the process of scaling that up and in scope, increasing that in scope and scale. With the downturn of the economy, are VCs less likely to invest in startups? I think I'm not sure what how much venture capital is being invested right now. I think I'm not, actually, I don't even know if it's a big change. But there is a lot of venture capital being invested. So I think there's still plenty of venture capital for good ideas. And I think the best way to attract venture capital is to try to come up with a demonstration of whatever product or service it is, and ideally take that as far as you can. Just see if you can actually sell that to real customers, and start generating some momentum. And then the further along you can get with that, then the more likely you are to get funding. What's the best advice you have for aspiring entrepreneurs? Well, I think starting a company is a very tough thing. There's a friend of mine, Bully, whose phrase is, starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. So you should certainly expect that it is going to be very hard. It's going to be harder than getting a job somewhere by a pretty good margin. And the odds of you losing the money that you've invested or your friends have invested is pretty high. I mean, those are just basic facts. So if you don't mind things being really hard and high risk, then starting a company is a good idea. Otherwise, it's probably unwise, and will certainly stress you out. So I think you have to be pretty driven to make it happen. Otherwise, you'll just make yourself miserable. And then in creating a company, as I said a moment ago, it's just you just want to really say, how do you make the best product or service possible? Companies that don't make good products or services just shouldn't exist. I think that's just pretty logical. How do you stay focused, motivated, and maintain enthusiasm when things don't go the way you had hoped? I think my sort of drive to get it done is somewhat disconnected from hope, enthusiasm, or anything else. I actually just don't care about hope or enthusiasm, motivation. I just give it everything I've got, irrespective of what the circumstances may be. You just keep going and get it done. How do you find balance in your life being involved in so many companies? Well, I think balance. It depends on what somebody's definition of balance is. I think my life would be very unbalanced by most people's definition, since I work quite a lot, and I probably put in sort of somewhere between 80 and 100 hours a week of work, which is a lot, yeah. So, and then most of my remaining waking hours are spent with my kids. So that's my life. I would say it's relatively unbalanced. So the great thing about having something like an iPhone or BlackBerry or whatever is that you can kind of intermix activities. So I can kind of be with my kids and on email at the same time, since they don't require constant attention. What are a couple of inventions you expect to change the world in the coming years? Well, I think the biggest problem, terrestrial problem that Earth faces is the sustainable energy problem, so I think there's going to be a number of breakthroughs in that arena because they kind of have to be. But I think there will be, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So I would expect to see significant breakthroughs in energy storage, and that's maybe the biggest area. Probably breakthroughs in energy generation as well. Although I actually think that there have been some pretty big breakthroughs in solar power. In fact, a lot of people are unaware of the fact that the cost of solar panels has dropped by a factor of basically almost 4. So certainly 3, but almost 4 over the last 5 years. That's a massive massive reduction. I classify that as a breakthrough. Uh, um, yeah, there's going to be huge breakthroughs in genetics, in decoding DNA, and then also writing DNA. So once you've read DNA, you figure out where's the error. You want to sort of write the corrective code. I mean, DNA is basically firmware. So if there's a disease that somebody has and it's genetic, then you could sort of fix that. And I think we may be able to fix sort of Alzheimer's, and so I expect there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs in the genetics area. That's going to be really, really huge. Of course, a lot of the biggest breakthroughs are going to be difficult to anticipate in advance. Yeah, but probably the whoppers are energy transport, and genetics. There'll probably be some really big breakthroughs in understanding of the human mind and consciousness as well. So how did it feel to have Iron Man based on you? Well, I should point out that Iron Man was only partially based on me because I've got 5 kids and Iron Man didn't sort of swinging bachelor. But I guess it's kind of cool. And we've got an Iron Man statue that was donated to SpaceX by Jon Favreau, signed by the whole cast, including Scarlett Johansson and everything. It was kind of cool. That's pretty cool, I guess. What happened to the Top Gear debacle over the Tesla Roadster? And this is basically where Top Gear falsely implied that the Tesla Roadster had run out of energy when they tested it, which it didn't. In fact, because the whole vehicle is a detailed computer log, so we can see it didn't. And then also when we dropped the car off, one of our guys happened to see a script sitting on the table. He'd already dropped the car off, and so reading through the script, and in the script the car breaks down. I'm like, wait a second, you wrote the script before we even gave you the car. So there's something wrong about that, and we wouldn't think it was. We were hoping it wouldn't be that bad, but then when we did the Tesla IPO roadshow, we just got one investor after another asking us why our car broke down in Top Gear, particularly in Europe. Every investor we met with in Europe asked us why our car broke down, and I was like, well, this is ridiculous. So, and then to add salt to the wound, Top Gear just kept repeating that episode. So who knows how the lawsuit will go, but it's still working its way through the British courts. And our demands are pretty simple. It's just like stop playing the episode where you falsely claim that or imply that our car broke down. Seems like a reasonable thing to ask for. Do you ever feel obligated to provide philanthropic support back to South Africa? Well, I'm not sure I'd say I feel obligated to provide it to South Africa specifically as a country, but I do a lot of philanthropic things. And South Africa is sort of among the beneficiaries, I guess, of that. I've done a lot of sort of science education things. I've donated to a couple of educational institutions in South Africa. But overall, in terms of I've got a little foundation called the Musk Foundation, and I try to figure out what's the most good it can do, kind of independent of one country or another, with a focus on science education, kind of pediatric research, and kind of environmental causes. All that, trying to make sure that anything we do from an environmental standpoint isn't related to SolarCity or Tesla, because that wouldn't be right. What is the greatest factor that has enabled you to reach the point you have in your career? Well, I think probably I have a really high intrinsic drive, Yeah, I just get really sort of set on something, and then I just kind of am able to keep going in that direction. Um, and the reason I say it seems to be intrinsic is because when I was like 5 or 6 or something, and my mom grounded me, said I couldn't go play with my cousins who lived on the other side of town. I don't know, 10 miles away or 12 miles away or something. And then I was pretty mad about that, and so I couldn't really read. I couldn't really read, but I didn't really know the way. I mean, I kind of knew the way, but I walked clear across town and arrived at my cousin's house several hours later, freaking my mom out. And that's kind of a weird thing to do if you're 5. So I figured that must be something intrinsic. Who are some figures that you look up to in the business world? Well, I think obviously somebody like Steve Jobs. I mean, everyone and their mom looks up to Steve Jobs in that respect. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, for sure. They're friends of mine. Done an amazing job. And Warren Buffett on the investing side, and I think Bill Gates has done a number of impressive things, obviously with Microsoft and with the Gates Foundation. Yeah, there's a lot of great people out there, and I think also historically, the guys like Edison and Tesla, obviously, were big fans of Tesla. He's well known in the scientific community. The units of magnetism are units of Tesla, but he's not as well known in the popular mindset. So that's why Tesla Motors is named after him. So I think, but I also admire people like Winston Churchill and just some of the great, interesting people. Oscar Wilde. I mean, there's lots of really interesting, cool people in history. So what advice do I have for college graduates interested in getting involved in the spheres you've tapped into? Certainly I'd invite you to apply for a job at SolarCity or Tesla or SpaceX.